Good evening and welcome. Namaste. Our entire reflection this evening is on Ananda, the meaning and import of that word, which translates as happiness or joy. Where is this locale? What is this dimension and depth? And its various expression systems in the cosmos of beings according to the Rishi's vision. So all of that we'll explore, but before we get into that, let us just take a few moments of meditation, just letting our minds relax and settle. Whatever we've come to experience throughout the day, allow that to quickly be assimilated and relax so we're fully open and present to these beautiful mantras. So our minds are tuned enough to attune to the Rishi's vision. So just let your eyes remain closed for a moment. Your body is tall, balanced from head to toe. Your hands are resting on the knees or lap. The eyes are looking within between the eyebrows, the space where the inner light manifests. And you're watching the breath. This is the particular posture most conducive for meditation. Balanced and stable, yet relaxed. Soft focus. Watching the dancing breath. The life-giving principle as we saw in the Upanishad. Reflecting upon the prana or watching the breath gives our sense of agency or egoity a chance to rest back and be open to the possibility of a common source. Allows the mind to listen to the whispers of the scripture with faith. And gives us the strength and courage to live our conviction day by day, moment by moment. So your body is balanced, your gaze is focused, you're flowing with the breath. What the Rishi in this Upanishad is trying to convey is there's a dimension of who you are untouched by the tremors and sorrows of the world. There's a dimension that transcends doing, having, becoming, and unbecoming as well. And that dimension is not something external or away from you. It is so very close. Brahma vedahapnoti param tadeshabhyukta satyam jnanamanantam brahma yo veda nihitam guhaya. In fact, that truth is reverberating within your heart as I exist. I am. I is Brahman, pure being, the sorrowless light of lights. In this, whatever falls into the field of what I objectify has a special relationship with that Brahman. Appearance, a play, a vibration. So just take a moment to watch the breath and enjoy the feeling of I am. Enjoy the feeling of presence. I'm the one observing my breath. The breath is in and never away from me. But to know the breath means I transcend. I stand apart as the drik, the seer. The breath is the scene. This seeing, perceiving self seems as if it's limited by the scope of the upadi, the body, mind, and ego. But in fact, that presence is none other than the God, Brahman. Hence the Rishi cries out in ecstasy, Brahma Veda apnoti param. The knower of Brahman attains the supreme. You have to know that presence is Brahman, one without a second, all peace, the running thread behind all thought, the seeing power behind all minds. The light behind the sun and the light behind every eye. Brahma Vedapnoti Param Tadeshabhyukta Satyam. It always is. Jnanam, that knowing power. Anantam, indivisible. Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam Parame Vyoman, sparkling in your heart as I am. Sohushnute sarvan kamahan saha. Recognizing this presence frees you from strain and struggle and confusions involved in chasing happiness, chasing contentment, chasing peace, chasing feeling connected and belonging. You recognize, I am the heart of all hearts. I am ever connected. I transcend this body. Therefore, I'm ever safe. I am the very source of all the pleasures that every being experiences in all their various degrees. This is something to be known. Brahma Vedapnoti Param. The one watching the breath is the Brahman. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karavavahi Tejasvinavadhitamastu Mavit Om Shanti 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 Om Ekadantaya Vidmahi Vakrudundaya Dhimahi Tanno Danti Prachodayat Om Shri Mahaganapataye Namaha Om Satchidananda Rupaya Vishwatpatyadihetave Tapatraya Vinashaya Shri Krishnaya Vayam Namaha Shri Krishnaya Vayam Namaha Dhyanamulam Gururabhuti Pujamulam Gururpadam Mantramulam Gururvakyam Mokshamulam Guru Kripa Mokshamulam Guru Kripa Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace be, peace be, peace be. Relax, relax, relax. Hari Om. So, the section that we are currently reflecting upon is second chapter, Brahmananda Vali, section on the Mimamsa, or investigation, a thought experiment on the part of the Rishi to reflect upon the various beings coursing through the cosmos, some engaged in good, better, best works, some having grosser, subtler, or even fainter bodies. What kind of happiness do they experience? And what is the source of it? And how does that compare to a Brahmavida, a knower of the source, or a knower of oneself as Brahman? That's being discussed and explored here, and it's quite interesting. And what you're finding is that there's 10 types of beings that the Rishi discusses and grades the various level of Ananda that they experience and how that compares to a Shrotriyam, one who's well read and understanding and assimilating the scriptures properly, and one who's akamahata, free from lust. So let us take up the beginning of this section, though it's a bit of a review. We had a week break. Let's take up the beginning of this section. If you have that digital copy, it's on page 39. I'll just chant this, and then we can chant it together as well. Saishanandasya mimagumsa bhavati yuva syat sadhu yuvadhyayakaha Ashishto dridishto balishtaha tasyayam prithivi sarvavitasya purna syat sa ego manusha anandaha te shatam manusha anandaha sa ego manusha gandharvanam anandaha shrutriyasya cha kamahatasya. So the first thing that was discussed is Rishi wants a standard unit before going on and multiplying it. So the standard unit of happiness is a well-to-do, well-off human being. The word for that is manusha. Manusha is a human being. Now, what's unique about this human being is that this human being is yuva, young, and strong and healthy, and also a sadhu, living an ethical and moral life. Adhyayaka, well educated, and has the capacity to get or acquire whatever this person desires. Whatever available on this living earth is accessible at a moment's notice. Tasyeya prativi sarvavittasya purnasyat. Whatever it is, this person can access. And not only can they access it, but they can also enjoy it. They have the proper training. Adhyayaka. Something like a something like a fine wine. So there's a certain way in which you hold the glass, you swirl it and sniff it, and then the age, and then all of that. It becomes increasing in pleasure to various degrees, depending upon the training and your competency on the proper art form itself. So similarly, this person, this manusha, this human being, has all the faculties to enjoy, and whatever she or he wants to enjoy on this earth, prithivi. This is one unit of happiness. So we looked at the previous class, we looked at the realm of human beings as being a unique matrix of energy between matter and spirit, somewhere in between, and being adaptable, capable, but also subject to the kleshas of self-ignorance, mainly, and then all the offshoots of that, like false identities that we build and narratives that we create around that. So this is one unit of happiness, and Rishi says, Te yeshatam manusha anandaha se eko manusha gandharvanam anandaha. Take that one unit of happiness and multiply it 100-fold. 100 times that is what's known as a manushya gandharvanam, a human artist or a human poet or musician. I'll let your imagination run wild. So an artist or a musician or a poet has a greater sense of sensibility, sensitizing themselves to sound and light and form and color. Therefore, having a greater capacity to reflect the Brahmanandam they are in the objects of the world. But they still don't recognize who they are as the source of that. Rishi says, Shrotriyasya cha akamahatasya. This is equivalent to one who is well versed in the scriptures, and also one who has given up the tendency to seek happiness outside of themselves and rather discovered it as their nature. So let's continue and see how this develops. So I'm going to chant from the verse Te ye shatam manusha gandharvanam anandaha. And you can repeat after me. First I'll chant it. Te ye shatam manusha gandharvanam anandaha. Se eko deva gandharvanam anandaha. Shrutriyasya cha kamahatasya. So you're recognizing that proliferation. It's going to end that way in every single one of these mantras. Shrutriyasya cha akamahatasya. So you can repeat after me. Te ye shatam
Te ye shatam
manushya
manushya
gandharvanam
gandharvanam
anandaha.
anandaha
Se eko
sa eko
deva gandharvanam
deva gandharvanam
anandaha.
anandaha
Shrutriyasya
shrotriyasya
cha kamahatasya.
cha kamanahastasya.
So, cha akamahata asya cha kamahatasya.
Chakamanaha tasya.
I'm just breaking it apart for you. So, cha kamahatasya. Okay, so what does this say? Is that 100 times those human artists or poets or musicians is a celestial artist. So now we're moving in between the worlds of human and divine. A deva gandharva, a celestial artist. That puts us at 10,000 times one unit of human happiness. So what's interesting about them? I just made a few notes about some of the myths and literature we have surrounding these kinds of beings. Is that they are greater skill set, they have a purer mind and a pure form, and they typically act as messengers to the various gods and playing music in their celestial courts. So, one such prominent example in the literature that we find is Narada. Narada. So, let's see who's next. Te ye shatam deva gandharvanamanandaha sa eka pitrunam chiraloka lokanam anandaha shrotriyasya cha kamahatasya. So you can repeat after me. Te ye shatam
Ye shatam
deva gandharvanam
devagandharvanam
anandaha
anandaha
sa eka
sa eka
pitrunam
pitrinam
chiraloka
chiraloka
lokanam
lokanam
anandaha
anandaha
shrutriyasya
srotriyasya
chakamahatasya.
chakamanaha tasya.
This is a very interesting twist, which I find highlights the value system of the Vedic Rishi. You find that now 100 times the happiness enjoyed by a Devagandhara, a celestial musician, is what's known as Pitranam, the realm of the ancestors, the family person. Look at the value, where they place the role and significance of creating a beautiful family. So Pitranam means one who's entering a human womb, one who's uh, lived a life of dedication to the family. Now, mythically, these Pitras occupy their own realm. In fact, once a year we do something called Shraddha or Pitra Puja, where we make rice ball and sweet water offering to connect with those Pitras. The idea is that your ancestors are still there. Leaving this world, they, living a dignified, noble life dedicated to family, live in another kind of sphere of activity, another loka called Pitra Loka. The important thing is that the idea there is that the Pitras are guiding or act as kind of protectors over their descendants. So you worship the deceased in order that you receive their blessings and protection. Now they're enjoying a higher degree of pleasure or Brahmananda. And why is that? Because they occupy a subtler body, a more capable body of reflecting the truth. And not only that, that means that they require less. So they have more aesthetic pleasure in watching and observing. And you notice that in our lives too. Sometime instead of indulging in a meal, there's a certain pleasure that's heightened by restraining oneself and watching, or taking one bite less to savor the previous bite. You know, think about it that way. Instead of eating or consuming something, you're watching or looking. That gives you an increased pleasure that's more sustainable. Similarly, these pitras are watching over the descendants of their familial lineage. They also have a certain influence, it said, over uh, the material realm in terms of how the humans interact with the divine. So it's a kind of intermediate figure. So this is called Pitranam. If you do the math, 100 times the Deva Gandharvas equals, we're out now into 1 million times unit of human happiness, is what these Pitras experience. But Shrotriyasya cha kama tasya, that's equivalent to one who's listening to this scripture and understanding its import and depth, and one who's vairagya, one who has the capacity to take a look within themselves before they leap, recognize, oh, there's a greater source that I am, where all the happiness resides. Continuing. So now we're looking at the fifth being Rishi brings. Te ye shitam pitranam chiraloka lokanam anandaha se eka ajana janam devanam ananda shrotrayasya cha kamahatasya. So what kind of being is this? So higher than, more subtle than, more experientially pleasurable than the Pitras is a unique being to Vedic culture called Ajanaja Deva, which literally means a non-born luminous being. What in the world does that mean? I'll just try to paint. We're talking about some, or speculating and making thought experiment. Uh, One vision the Vedas have of the universe is that if you can imagine it, it's there somewhere in the recesses of our brain, or perhaps recesses of some corner in the universe. It's all there. All the data is there. And that thought came from somewhere. Combination of things. But here's one idea that the Rishi presents. There's such a being that doesn't take birth based upon its direct bearing of karma, but takes a spontaneous birth, often birthing into a natural force. That's a very fascinating idea. It now gives natural forces like wind, rain, lightning a sense of agency. So they also have a body, a certain sphere of activity, and a certain perception. And according to the Vedic view, they're also a being, a Purusha, experiencing a certain field and a certain sense of um, body there. Now, that's limiting in one sense because it's just one dimensional. There's not any dimension to that. You just take the form of a lightning or form of the rain. But you also have a tremendous power. And that power continues through what would be called one age or kalpa in the cycle of creation, sustenance, and destruction. So you're timeless in that way. And therefore, greater degree of happiness. That's why 100 times the one unit of the Pitras, these Ajanaja Devas, experience what's said to be 100 million times, 100 million times the pleasure enjoyed by a Pitra Deva. Another way we could think of this to kind of bring it down from the imaginary heights to day-to-day life is thinking about a family person experiencing a greater degree of pleasure than an independent musician, meaning they have a greater sense of commitment, a greater sense of communal involvement. And these Ajanaja Devas, you could think of too, on a practical level, you could think of them as environmental or communal people, or taking social leadership skills. You could think of it that way. I'm trying to bridge the gap between how we understand people's place in the world here on Earth, though Rishi may be conceiving a world outside of the Earth. So this is called Ajanaja Deva. So a spontaneous birth where you enter into not a physical womb or as a egg or as a plant or herb, but your body becomes a natural force that acts upon the earth. That's pretty profound to think about. And Rishi says it's possible. So this is a pramana. So let's take it as it is and imagine. So we're now at 100 million times. And Shrotriyasya cha akamahatasya, a knower of Brahman, one who's discovering that timeless dimension within themselves, has this equivalent. happiness. All right, let's see what's next. Te ye shatam ajana janam devanam anandaha sa eka karma devanam devanam ye karmana devan apiyanti shrutriyasya chakavahatasya. So you can repeat after me. Te ye shatam
Te ye shatam
ajana janam
ajanajanam
devanam
devanam
anandaha
anandah
sa eka
sa eka
karma devanam
karma devanam
devanamanandaha
devanamanandah
ye karmana
ye karmana
devan
devan
apiyanti
apiyanti
shrutriyasya
shrotriyasya
chakamahatasya.
chakamahatasya.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yep.
this is called a karma deva. Karma deva. So we went from an ajanaja deva to now a karma deva. So deva means a luminous being. Here we're talking about a quasi state, neither here or there. So you're a deva means that you're occupying a very subtle form of a body, not the physical body that we have here, which has a tendency to keep the mind uh, keep the mind weighted in tamas.
Mm.
So their body is mostly sattva, hardly any tamas or rajas. So what kind of deva is this? It's called a karma deva. Karma means action. So it can mean a deity or a deva of action. Here the vision or the idea is that they're orders of, or they're maintainers of orders, natural orders or cycles that happen in the creation. So they typically have the ability to influence justice or balance. One idea here is like a Lord Yama, the governor of death, how that cycle of destruction and rebirth and the governance of how one's actions carry a effect, cause effect relationship. That's governed by a certain order or rhythm. And that would be perhaps one example of a being of this type, governing cycle of birth and death, Lord Yama. Such beings are said to carry 100 times the Ajanaja Devas, which now puts us at a whopping 9 zeros after one, which means 10 billion times of happiness compared to uh, the one unit of human happiness that we discussed at the beginning of the book. Shrotriyasya chakamahatasya. Now, so when you read this, what can happen? Several movements can happen in the mind. One of the first obvious movements that take place is, what on earth are we talking about? And how does this affect me? And then also the thought can come, I will never even be able to attain one of these bodies. But I want to highlight the ending portion of this, that refrain, Shrotriyasya akama hatasya. What the Rishi is trying to do here is give you a conviction that what you're being taught in Upanishad is the most valuable. In fact, we're talking about the value of all values, the source of all sources, the light of all lights, the timeless truth who you are. There's no price for that. And that's the happiness or bliss that we're talking about, the Brahmanandam, your nature. So look at the elevation, the status that the Rishi's giving to who you are. You are the whole here, and nothing can take that away. Therefore, even 10 billion times human happiness doesn't compare to who you are as the source. Shrotriyasya cha akamaha tasya. And then the question comes, but how do I experience that? Then the guru says, who is experiencing that? I. Who are you? I am. Ah, who is that? So therefore, mind has to sit back. And then you recognize, oh, my mind is seen. I know my mind. Therefore, Does that eye have any body? Where is that eye placed? It seems like it's just covering or encapsulating the, the sphere of this physical individual body. But the scripture unlocks that myth to show you no. In fact, that eye is released from all karma. The eye is released from all bounds. It has no sphere. It's the very source of all spheres, illuminating everything. Therefore, Shrotriyasya Chakama Hatasya. Do not be discouraged by this huge list and these ever-ending zeros. You are the source of them. Continuing. Te yeshatam karma devanam anandaha sa eko devanam ananda shrotriyasya chakama hatasya. So one other thing that you could put, again, I'm going to try to weave it back to more of an experiential understanding that we have here on Earth, is that these karma devas could also be family people, but family people who do social service. And not only that, but those who also engage in rituals. That could also be the sphere of a karma deva. So earlier we saw the Pitras, family people. They have a certain amount of pleasure that is indescribable. Just ask any first parents, how that experience was of seeing your child born and the joy that you got out of that. That in their language, you become speechless. It was incomparable. I couldn't imagine how, she wove all of those elements together in my spouse's womb, and to see my child's face and see the first breath and everything, it takes my breath away. So that feeling is such a high degree. You'd be offended to call it pleasure. So think about those pitras, parents, or the ancestors. Then on top of that, being able to relate with a community or a larger whole gives you a larger network to experience the pleasures from other people. So I get to experience the pleasures through my children and grandchildren, the Pitra. But if I can extend my idea of family to be a larger community, the joy increases. Similarly, the Karma Devas could be one who, not on top of all that, also perform rituals to connect with those higher orders. Now, here, this is just called Deva. So instead of Karma Deva, this is just called a Deva here. Devam, Devan, Devanam Anandaha. So this is just a Deva. Devas, you could say, again, on a practical standpoint, you could say it's everything that the Karma Deva was doing plus meditation or Upasana. So let's chant it first. Te ye shatam
Tam
karma devanam
karma devanam
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 anandaha
anandaha
sa eko
sa eko
devanam
devanam
ananda
anandaha
shrotriyasya
shrotriyasya
chakamahatasya.
yakamahatasya.
So 100 times the happiness experienced
100
by
times.
a karma deva is the happiness experienced by a deva. So a deva, you could say, on the practical standpoint, you could say is one who's not only familial person, uh, doing acts of social service, rituals, but also has the subtlety of mind to do upasana, meditation on God with form. They're called a deva. Now, from a mythological standpoint, many times the devas are said to be the natural elements like Agni, fire, or Vayu, the wind. They're called a deva. So the elemental forces. You take that body. Imagine that. Imagine what life would be like instead of the human body with the five senses and this frame, the spine, and all the parts, perceiving through those five, and then responding with another set of five: hands, legs, speech, genitals, anus. this flow of traffic through this physical body, imagine that your body is just the wind. What would that feel like? The wind of the earth. Or imagine your body just as sound vibrating throughout the space. That could be considered the pleasure of a deva. You're not thinking about what to make for breakfast and who to call and who to apologize to and what complications this person had with that person. You're just vibrating throughout the space. That's your body. That's called a deva. And the amount of ananda is considered 100 times the karma devas. And don't worry, I did the math for you. That's 12 zeros on the end of one, which equals 1 trillion. Oh my goodness, this rishi won't stop. Shrotriyasya cha kama hatasya. And your natural joy is that. But the thing with this is that what's hilarious is we even have scriptural references of how these devas became prideful. They didn't recognize their nature as Brahman. We saw that in Taittiriya Upanishad on Sunday classes. Agni tried to approach the Brahman, but came with arrogance, thinking, I'm going to figure you out. And the Brahman said, who are you? And then Agni couldn't even move a blade of grass in front of the Brahman.
Couldn't burn it.
Yeah, he couldn't burn that blade of grass. Vayu couldn't move it. So those stories are to help us understand that even when we occupy high positions, that may not mean anything in terms of happiness. Happiness is everyone's birthright, their very natural state. Therefore, we don't become prideful with this knowledge. Instead, we enjoy sharing and giving it freely. So these are cosmic influencers, perhaps the elements uh, in this sense. Now, continuing, we're not done. There's a few more. This is the eighth being, and this is just one position. In the whole kalpa, or one age, there's 4 yugas and one kalpa, or cycle of creation, from the very first Om that Brahma, Lord Brahma, chants from the navel sprout of Lord Vishnu, all the way to the collapse of that Om is considered one cycle. And I won't get into the timeline of that. There's some math behind that. But one position is called Indra. There's only one Indra. Indra is said to be the king of gods. So perhaps all of these devas, like the fire and the water, and the earth element, they all look up to their teacher called Indra, or the one who's governing them. That's what's described here. I'll chant it. Te ye shatam devanamanandaha se eka indrasyananda shrotriyasya cha kamahatasya. Okay, you can chant. Te ye shatam
Te ye shadam
devanam
devanam
anandaha
anandah
sa eka
sa eka
indrasya
indrasya
anandaha
anandah
shrotriyasya
shrotriyasya
cha kamahatasya.
jakamahatasya.
So 100-fold that deva, like an Agni or a Vayu, picturing that your body is just pure fire and what power that may feel like. And not only that, but think about your the pervasiveness of your body. You're the body of heat within the stomach, within the warmth of the tongue, within the light behind my eyes, the heat in my speech, the heat in the Yetnashyala, the fire in the sun. So fire's got a large field of expansion, hence why that number is so large. But what about Indra, the one who governs and looks over those deities, the king of gods? 100 times that deva would now put us at 100 trillion times 1 unit of happiness, 1 unit of human happiness. Indrasya anandaha. And that is equivalent to Shrotriyasya Chakamahatasya, one who's alighting their minds upon these sweet words of the Upanishad. What do they say? Brahmavid apnoti param. The knower of Brahman attains the supreme. Knowing is possible in this human lifetime. So don't miss this rare chance. Te ye shatam indras, te ye shatam indrasyanandaha. स एको बृहस्पतेरानन्द श्रोत्रियस्य च कामः तस्य. Again, there's only one position in the whole cycle of creation that can attain this state, and this is called Brahaspati. Brahaspati is the guru of the gods. Okay, you can repeat after me. Te ye shatam
Te ye shatam
indrasyanandaha
indrasya anandaha
sa eko
sa eko
Brahaspati
brihaspati
ananda
ananda
shrutriyasya
srotriyasya
chakamaha tasya.
jakamaha tasya.
You take that king of gods, Indra, multiply it hundredfold. That's the happiness enjoyed by Brahaspati, the guru of the
Quadrillion.
gods. Guru of gods, I just leave it to your imagination. What can I say? It's hard to know. Uh, so easy to know oneself, but so hard to imagine what that may be like. The guru of gods. So we're currently at 10 quadrillion. Has anyone even heard of that number before? Quadrillion. That's 16 zeros. 10 quadrillion. Te ye shatam brahaspateranandaha sa eka prajapateranandaha shrotriyasya chakamaha tasya. Now you. Te ye shatam
Te ye shatam
brahaspati
brihaspati
anandaha
anandaha
sa eka
sa eka
prajapati
prajapati
anandaha
anandaha
shrotriyasya
srotriyasya
chakamaha tasya.
jakamaha tasya. My God.
Prajapati is said to be the father of all creatures, Lord Prajapati. Sometimes in Veda and Upanishadic literature, Prajapati is none other than the Brahman. Here, Prajapati is envisaged as Saguna Brahman, the entire sum of all bodies, minds, and ignorance is called Prajapati here. So Prajapati means Ishvara, the creator, sustainer, and destroyer of the universe. That's the Prajapati we're talking about, or Saguna Brahman. Saguna Brahman experiences what's known as 100 times the guru of gods, which puts us at a whopping 1 quintillion units of happiness. 18 zeros uh, followed, following the 1 unit of Manusha Ananda, human happiness. So Indra, you're king of gods, naturally more joy comes. Then you're advisor of all the gurus and the king, naturally more power, more happiness. It's faulty logic, as we're seeing. But here, Prajapati, the very father of all creatures, the very Saguna Brahman itself. What more can be than that? Me, Upanishad says, the me that transcends this body, mind, and ego. Therefore, te ye shatam prajapateranandaha sa eko brahmana ananda shrotriyasya cha kamaha tasya. The Brahman is greater than all of this combined. You can repeat after me. Te ye shatam
Te ye shatam
prajapati.
prajapati
I've been saying that wrong. This is a funny Sandhi.
prajapati
Prajapatehe
prajapati
anandaha.
anandaha.
So it's prajapati, but in this grammatical syntax, prajapatehe
Yeah.
plus ananda. Yeah. Sa eko
Sa eko
brahmana
brahmana
anandaha
anandaha
shrotriyasya
srotriyasya
chakamaha tasya.
jakamaha tasya.
100-fold Prajapati is the unit of one known as Brahman. You see, sa ekaha brahmana. The brahmana there means a jivan mukti, one who knows their nature or their identity with the source, being, the pure perceiving power that you are, Brahman. Shrotriyasya cha akamaha tasya, which is the same as a Shrotriya, one well versed in this Upanishad, and one who recognizes there is nothing outside of me to get. There is no other. I am whole in myself. Now, then you feel, well, there's nothing to do then. Should I just give up? Give up on my family, on my job, and then no. In fact, all of those become fields for your expression system as Brahman. The tools. Karma now is a tool for you. You are not bound by karma. Karma is now your tool to express and relate the goodness that you are in the world. And such a person is called a Jivan Mukta, or Brahman itself. So Jivan Mukta knows themselves as Brahman. There's an identity shift there. And that shift is not in contradiction with the empirical reality or also pratibhasakam, your mental reality. The mental reality is like the froth and foam. The empirical reality is like the wave. But the wave and the foam are never away from the water. Water transcends. That's the way the transcendence goes. So I see all three dimensions of who I am: the Brahman, the human being, and also a thinker. And none of them are in contradiction. Brahman overwhelms the human and the thinker. Person who has this recognition is called Shrotriyasya cha akamahatasya. And such a person experiences 100 quintillion times happiness of a human being. Just for reference, that's 1 trillion times 100 million. I just broke it apart into two figures that are a little bit more easy to assimilate. Shrotriyasya cha akamahatasya. So that repetition of that phrase is to make you deeply come to appreciate and take another look at what the Upanishad is saying, the value that they're trying to paint, and the importance they're trying to give on this knowledge. So, how sacred is it? Well, the knowledge is about you, and you seem to be the center figure in your life, your decision making, the center figure in your relationships. But who is that you? How deep does that I or sense of self go? And the joy of this discovery is that as you go deeper, you recognize you're more inclusive. You recognize you're more connected. You recognize that what I was seeking in my connectivity and relationships, I already am. Therefore, you show up as a complete person. Show up as a fearless leader. Show up as the goddess of compassion herself, because you have that power and that source within you. Therefore, that statement again and again, Shrotriyasya cha akamahatasya, is to make us very alert to what Upanishad is saying and not dismiss it as just mere fantasy. So let that phrase, that repetition, help our minds stay focused on the study and see it through. Now, what we're going to see that closes this Brahmananda Vali is we're going to see a unity statement. As Rishi is reflecting on the nature of this Anandam and thinking about what that is, and as I connect my sense of I to that, I start to see that that is what's powering everything else around me. So you get a kind of Mahavakya in a sense, or really the essence of how we chant Gayatri in the morning. We find that statement here in the Upanishad itself. So we'll just chant this and we'll explore the meaning when we meet next week. This is too profound and deep to just pass by quickly with the remaining time we have. So first just listen, and then we'll chant it and then close feeling the reverberation of this. So these mantras are addressing your unity with the cosmos. Sa yaschayam purushe yascha savaditye sa ekaha sa ya evam vita Asmat lokat pretya etam annamayamatmanamupasangramati etam pranamayamatmanamupasangramati etam manomayamatmanamupasangramati etam vijnanamayamaatmanamupasangramati etam anandamayamatmanamupasangramati tadapyesha sloko bhavati. It's beautiful how these mantras are structured. You may have noticed we went through the koshas there. I don't know if you caught that. Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomana, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya. So a watchful person is watching, detaching, transcending. So through that watching, that observing power that you have, you recognize a deeper and more pervasive dimension of who you are, from the food sheath, Annamaya, all the way to the sheath of ignorance, the mystery of not knowing. So you can repeat after me and we'll close with this. Sayaschayam purushe,
Sayaschayam Purushe,
yascha sava, uh, yascha savaditye,
Yascha Sava Ditye,
sa ekaha,
Sa Ekaha,
saya evam vita,
Sahayam Vita,
अस्मात् लोकात् प्रत्य
Asmat Lokat Pratya,
एतम्
Etam
अन्नमयमात्मानम्
Annamaya Atmanam,
उपसङ्ग्रामति
Upasangramati,
एतम्
Ekam
प्राणमयमात्मानम्
Pranamaya Atmanam,
उपसङ्ग्रामति
Upasangramati,
एतम्
Etam
मनोमयमात्मानम्
Manomaya Atmanam,
उपसङ्ग्रामति
Upasangramati,
एतम्
Etam
विज्ञानमयमात्मानम्
Vijnanam Atmamayatmam,
here विज्ञानम्
Vijnanam
अयम्
Ayam
आत्मानम्
Atmanam
उपसङ्ग्रामति
Upasangramati,
एतम्
Etam
आनन्दमय
Anandamaya
आत्मानम्
Atmanam
उपसङ्ग्रामति
Upasangramati,
तदप्येष
Tadapyesha
श्लोको
Shloko
भवति.
Bhavati.
Beautiful.
That's nice.
So I hope you enjoy chanting that as much as I do. It can be quite a mouthful, but with practice, it becomes a whole sadhana in itself, just learning how to chant these mantras and then feel them in your body, subtly reverberating into your mind. And the beauty of these reflections is, I promise you, when you stay with one of these thoughts that the Rishi presents, some of the most pressing and challenging times that present your present themselves to you and the uncertainty of life, you'll find that these awaken in your heart. They empower you in such a way where suddenly you remember. That's why we were chanting that earlier mantra in the first book, that Sumedha. Um, may I have that Medha Shakti, or that power to remember all these good teachings. And may those come to play at the forefront when I find myself in states that would normally lead me to freezing or inaction or fear. So, in my experience, these mantras protect you that way. They create that awareness in you to take skillful action in times that can be so difficult and challenging. You now have the empowerment to stop, take a deep breath, reflect, awaken that happiness within yourself, and respond appropriately. And those responses to life make up the sum total of who we are, what we do. But you can do that relaxed because you know I am above it. I above just acting and doing and getting. So we're going to explore this mantra when we meet next. And it's talking about the core reality behind your mind being the same as the core reality behind the sun. Same Purusha. They're not separate. That non separateness is the vision of Vedanta, Advaita, non dual nature of what is. And that is not opposed to the experience of duality or multiplicity at the very heart of it. That's a very profound vision that gives us lots of felicity and ability to accommodate and accept the differences we see in the world. So let us just close the way we started with a couple moments of meditation, feeling our blessedness to have this chance to reflect upon Taittiriya Upanishad, a beautiful group of people who see the value in reflecting upon these sweet words, words that want to address our deepest, most self, words that are lovingly trying to penetrate through the conditioning to help us see that there is an unconditioned self, a pure light or pure love. Shrotriyasya cha akamahatasya. When I really reflect on the nature of happiness, and that that's truly what I'm seeking in all my pursuits, one comes to pause and really think about the nature of that happiness. Where does it reside? Does it have a form? Is it just temporary, something I experience and then lose? Or where did it come from? A certain conviction begins to arise in us after listening to these mantras that happiness is no thing. It's not a fleeting experience or something that just happens as a result of brain chemistry, but happens to be the very heart of who I am. And in fact, the very heart of creation. Anandam. That's why the statement with such clarity and confidence came: the knower of Brahman attains the supreme. You only have to know that in your heart. Know from this night onwards that nobody can take happiness away from you. You are a beacon of light, ever available to express happiness in your own unique way. It is your heart and my heart too. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamabhaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. And none of these sacred teachings would be possible without the Guru. So we bow before and honor Swami Bodhananda, who is the best embodiment of the bliss of this knowledge, Bodhananda. To that Shri Guru, I bow.